When I first started in consulting, I thought all I had to do was to work hard and everything would just kind of fall in places. It didn't really work out that way. The biggest mistake I see new consultants make, they throw a bunch of information on a slide, but they don't answer the client's question. Ask yourself, am I managing up or is my manager managing me? It's a lose-lose situation for everyone on the team. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elaine. I'm a consultant living in New York after grad school. I wish someone had warned me. When I first started in consulting, I thought all I had to do was to work hard and everything would just kind of fall in places. It didn't really work out that way. Instead, I was drowning in debts, getting pinged at all hours of the day, and somehow still felt like one step behind. If you're new to consulting and your inbox is already overflowing, your team is expecting instant responses, and somehow whatever you do, it just never feels enough, you're definitely not alone. I've been consulting for 4 years, and as a manager, I've seen both sides. I've realized those who thrive don't necessarily grind harder, but they play smarter. So today I'm sharing 5 unspoken rules that I wish I knew earlier. These are the ones that separate from those who just survive and those who actually figure this out. And rule number 1 is the biggest reason why new consultants burn out. Rule number 1, prioritize ruthlessly and don't even try to do everything. Consulting will throw 100 tasks at you all at once. If you try to do everything perfectly, you're going to crash very fast. Especially in the beginning of a project, it's a very chaotic period where your manager, director, even partner is trying to figure out the scope of the project. So it's like being dropped right into a moving train and trying to keep up. I learned this the hard way on my project, so don't make my mistake. I was on a 3-week project and we had to deliver on something on day 2. I thought, hey, might as well get started on the deck, right? So I spent hours going down this path that made sense in my head, and I spent hours tweaking slides, only to find out it was totally the wrong direction to go down. And the worst part is I had to pull a late night just to make up the lost time. It's a lose-lose situation for everyone on the team. Never assume you're working on the right priority, always check first. Now I just ask one simple question. If there's one priority I have to get done in the next few hours, what would that be? And you have no idea, this one question saved me so many hours of wasted effort. Rule number 2, your manager's perception of you matters, so manage up. The younger version of me used to think that if I just did great work, people would notice, right? Not always. Consulting is as much about the perception as it is about performance. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if your manager doesn't see it, it won't matter. I worked with analysts who were insanely smart, but they kept getting mediocre reviews. Why? It's because they're not really making their manager's life easier. At this point, you might be thinking, you're not the first person who told me to manage up, but what does that actually mean? I broke it down into 3 things. Number 1, don't wait for your manager to check in. I hate to tell you this, but by the time they check in with you, it's already too late. Flag risks early. It's a fast-paced job and you're going to be making mistakes. The earlier you surface them, the better. Be honest and own up for your mistakes. If your team has a problem with people making mistakes, remember it is more of a reflection on the work environment than your own ability. Ask for feedback before it's given. Instead of waiting for your mid-project or end-project review, just ask, what is one thing I could be doing better? This makes you look more engaged and it helps you to improve way faster. So next time when you're really deep in a project, ask yourself, am I managing up or is my manager managing me? Because if it's the latter, then you're leaving your reputation in somebody else's hands. Rule number 3, think like a client, not an analyst. The biggest mistake I see new consultants make, they throw a bunch of information on a slide, but they don't answer the client's question. Consulting isn't about making slides, it's about answering the right questions. Before you even start working on something, you might want to ask yourself, why does this matter to the client? For example, I work with private equity clients a lot. They don't just care about the numbers, they care about growth. Most of the time, they're buying a business so they can flip the profit in a few years. So if I put together a market analysis without talking about the potential growth, I've completely missed a mark. So here's what I do. Listen carefully during client calls. Make sure you take notes. After the call, I would ask for an internal debrief call. This meeting is going to be super helpful to align your expectations and questions on the direction of the project. Make sure you ask a lot of questions, even if you think those are stupid questions. A lot of the stuff you're asking is not going to be relevant, but that's totally normal. But I promise the more you practice, the faster you're going to start thinking like a client. If you found this video helpful, please hit like and subscribe so more people can find advice like this, and it tells me to make more content like this for you in the future. Consulting can be really intense, but you don't have to go through it alone. Rule number 4, understand your team culture early. If you watched my last video, why most consultants are miserable and how to avoid it, then you know that consulting is a people business. Team dynamic is so important. Every project has its own unwritten rules. I've worked with directors who wanted real-time pings and chats as soon as things arise. I've also worked with directors who preferred email for non-urgent stuff and only pings if you needed to reach out to them immediately. And the annoying part is sometimes people don't really tell you. So if you don't pick up on those subtle cues, you're gonna feel out of sync all the time. Here's a cheat sheet. When you start a project, pay attention to, does your manager usually log off to have dinner with their family? What's their communication style? Do they prefer email, phone calls, or Slack channel? Are they a super detail-oriented person, meaning they like to be in decks a lot of times? Or are they a bigger picture person? Hey, just tell me the headline. I don't want to see your slides. I wish things could be less complicated, but little things like this really make or break your working relationships. This next rule, I think this is probably the fastest way to get on your manager or director's good side. A disclaimer though, don't use this on someone who is way more senior, like a partner. Only do this with your immediate manager. Always do minimum viable before you produce full slides. This was my secret weapon as a junior consultant. Most of my projects were 3 to 4 weeks long, which means there's really no time to waste. So instead of making a very polished slide, I would do a simple minimum viable sketch. Let's take this blue strategy slide as an example. A big disclaimer, this is not one of my client slides. I just found this online, but it's very representative of something I would produce on my project. So you can spend a lot of time polishing up this slide, make the triangles on the left side and make it all aligned and very pretty. Or I would just do a simple sketch that directionally shares the vision of the slide. I will then take that sketch to my manager, have them tear the sketch apart, go back into PowerPoint and make something you know is going to be appreciated. A lot of times when you create a slide, you're going to get feedback like, I like this part, but I don't love that part, and we're going to need more research on X topic. So next time, before you spend a lot of time making slides, go to your manager and say, hey, does this directionally make sense? Your future self will thank you for all the hours you saved. It wasn't so long ago that I was an associate myself, which is why I'm sharing my lessons with you so you don't have to make the same mistakes. I want to hear what's your biggest pain point though. Is it the long hours or the nonstop feedback, or is it just simply to keep everything up? Drop in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time.